A narcissist can make anything your fault. A narcissist can make you believe that any situation, anything that happens is your fault and will use it against you. I've known that for a while. I was reminded of it again today. Hi, this is olliemathews. Thanks for watching my next video on my channel, Recovering from Narcissistic Abuse. Today, myself and my wife, we were at the Publix, which is a supermarket down here in the South and in Florida. And when we got up to the register to pay, the girl had to call her manager for something, and she said something to the manager, and it reminded me of when I worked in a supermarket up in New Jersey, ShopRite. And the reason is the girl reminded me of somebody I went out with a few times, and I'll talk about that a little later because that'll tie into my second part of the video. And she had mentioned something to the manager, and he said, well, you're union. And I remember, that's right, I had been in a union, because when you work for a supermarket, most of them are unionized, and the supermarket I worked for was in a union, 1262, I think it was. And I had started working for ShopRite at 15. It was like my first job. Started there, pushing shopping carts and cashier and bagging and all that type of stuff that a teenager would do. And I worked there through high school, and into college. I was there until I was 23 because I eventually went into loss prevention with them. But in my teen years, when I was working in one store as a cashier, I was in a union. So I was 19 years old in 1993. And the union was having a labor dispute with the supermarkets at the time. And the union went on strike. And they were out there picketing. And I mentioned this because in my opening I said a narcissist can turn any situation against you. My parents did. And I was 19. I was working part-time at ShopRite. I was going to school for criminal justice. And at the time, I had mentioned that I had had to have my engine fixed that my parents had paid for, $2,000. And they made like this big deal about it, and it was one of those things where I was constantly paying how they controlled me through money. So when the union went on strike, my father and mother, I come downstairs and my father and mother are in the kitchen, and they're like, we need to talk to you. Oh, talk to me about what? Well, what are you going to be doing for money? And what are you going to be doing for a job? Don't think we're going to support you. And this barrage of how dare you be on strike, and what do you think? You would think the way they were acting, I was the strike coordinator. Like I had organized this whole strike on the East Coast for this entire union, and I was just some cashier. And they knew that. They knew it. But as a narcissist will do, they will find any situation they can. Say, how can I get mileage out of this? How do I get this to use against so I can have control? So everything out of my parents' mouth from that moment on was about me having a job. They're not giving me money. I better find a job. I better find a job. If you found a job, are you looking for a job? And I'm like, I'm like, I'm gonna go back to us a stupid, like at the time we knew it was a stupid supermarket strike. Like, you don't know that they're gonna end up firing you, and it was this. But you could see as it was happening, this gleam in both their eyes. Like, you could tell they were enjoying this. And my parents would do this repeatedly on several different, like on different issues. And it was just they would pick an issue and then they would just barrage you with it and hammer me and hammer me and hammer me and hammer me. And just for the sake of control. I'm a 19-year-old kid. This is a stupid part-time job. This is a part-time job as a cashier, and you would have thought that I was working a Fortune 500 job with all these responsibilities. To this day, it affects me what they did. And you know how long that strike lasted? 3 days. 3 days. It was relentless, and it's something that traumatized me because I was an adult and I felt helpless, and you can't fight back, and you're being bullied by your own parents. And they're making me feel like, and this was something I think even helped damage me later on, and where I had problems later on in life dealing with any time. I don't deal with like, don't criticize me, don't do it at work, like, because you just get so tired of hearing negative stuff about you from your own family. You just shut down. You can't take it anymore from any. You don't want to hear it. You just don't want to hear it. You've built up a defense to it. Don't talk to me about it. I've had it. Over nothing. Over nothing. 19 years old, and it was every second I had to get out of the house. But where do you go? Like, and at 19, you're trying to, you're going to try to find another job. All the supermarkets were on strike. So it's like, I was still in college. I mean, I was going to school. And it was just one of these things that, well, one I can remember because I was triggered today in the supermarket. Like, wow, that really happened. Oh my God, I remember that now. Well, once the union, and then for some reason the strike came in, and that whole situation. And here's the funny part: when my parents did that to me, they were 41 years old, same age I am right now. And my father had given up on life because he decided at that point, that was the age that he decided, I'm going to scam the Social Security system and really kick in with the narcissism. And I think there was some projection there. Just an opportunity to make you feel like dirt, like you can't, this is your fault, you can't do anything. They don't let you up, they don't let you breathe. I mean, could you imagine at 19 years old being basically blamed for a union strike? Like, for a cashier's job, and being treated like, oh my God, I didn't lose anything. Like, what are you talking about? This is beyond being yelled at because your union went on. So you didn't have a vote. You're 19 years old. You work part-time. It's like, it was just, if a narcissist sees the opportunity to make you miserable, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. So, to the second part of my story here with the cashier. The cashier reminded me of a girl I dated back in New Jersey. You know, as teenagers, you know, nothing serious. But I remember my mother, and this gets into my mother's part of the story again. And I'm only mentioning it because I had the flashback today, and you know, it's something me and my wife have been talking about with my mother's aggressive sexuality towards me. Um, you know, my wife's convinced. My first therapist was convinced. My wife's convinced. Even I'm convinced now that, you know, on top of my mother touching me and doing what she was doing with me, she just wanted to have sex with me. It was always this gleam when she talked about sex. And back to my story, I remember saying this girl, you know, how dumb and stupid and she's such a whore. And then I remembered my mother said that about every girl I dated since I was 16 years old. She's dumb, they're stupid, they're whores, they're all little sluts, they're all little whores shaking their shit. And then on the other side of the coin, because I was always very good with women, it wasn't ever a problem. And my mother being married to my father, the chump that he is, you know, no woman could stand him. You know, father got dumped, and 2 weeks later ended up engaged to my mother after getting dumped. So so that's a whole nother. I might have mentioned it. But the other side of that coin is, even though these girls were all stupid and whores and giggling, and my mother would always come in and be like, how do you get these girls, Matthew? What do you do to them? What do you say? How do you touch them? Just the only one she never said that about is my ex-wife, because my ex-wife didn't look like any of the other girls I've dated or my current wife. First thing my mother said about my current wife when she met her, when my mother met her, she was already into her 60s, 61, I think, 61, 62, when she had met my current girlfriend, who was at the time, I think, 24, because I was 34 at the time, 35 at the time. So I'm trying to get the math right. It doesn't matter. What matters is what my mother said when they first met. She met her. My girlfriend went to go into the bathroom, and the first thing out of my mother's mouth is, I had a much better body at her age. My tits were so much better than hers. My ass was so much rounder than hers. You know, I think that was the first time my girlfriend told me, you know, I think your mother has a thing for you. Like, well, when she was my girlfriend. But I never actually put two and two together. You know, recently I have, and like I said, I've always been like, ugh, with my mother, like, don't touch me, don't touch me. But that's really it. It was this pedophilic when I was younger, obviously. I don't even know, is it pedophilic or is it just such a hypersexuality she can't control herself? I mean, but the gleam in her eyes when she would talk about, like Like, it's the same gleam my father gets when you're giving him, you know, his narcissistic compliments. What feeds him, it's that. My mother is that. Oh, and she gets that soothing sing-song type of delivery. Well, soothing in her, what she thinks is soothing. To me, it's nails on a chalkboard. It's disgusting. But every woman, in other than my ex-wife, who she hated anyway. I mean, who she hated the entire marriage, and I got letters. Funny, I found letters about that, so I'm sure that'll be the subject of another video. It's these triggers. You know, a lot of times we try to hide from them and avoid them, but your mind's triggering you for a reason. It's trying to get you to remember, and it's trying to get it to you. At least in my case now, I feel the longer I'm no contact for them, the better my perspective gets. And I've already talked about my mother's hypersexuality anyway, but the Oedipus complex and every girl was dumb, stupid, a whore, a bimbo. Like, when I was hearing this at 16, 17, 18. They're so dumb. How do you get them? How do you get them? Because when we would break up, they usually get pretty upset. And that drove my mother nuts. And it drove my father nuts too. Because he didn't understand it. Like, why did these girls fall in love with him? And why are these girls chasing after him? And I'm such a loser. Well, it's like being in competition with your own family. You know, it's being raised by, you know, two mean girls, really. A couple of mean girls raised you. It's a tough one. This is a weird video, I know. It's a little weird, but I really think not sticking to, when you get one of these triggers, you need to follow it. And I know a lot of you hide from it, and you've told me, you know, I try not to think about it. You need to embrace them. Your mind is telling you something, is trying to show you something, to give you some perspective. You know, it's amazing. You know, one trigger led me to, you know, a memory of a pretty defining moment in my life, you know, being brutalized over a supermarket strike, just for the hell of it. You know, and then my parents would do that on a multitude of issues. A multitude of issues. It was like a game. It was like sport. Dog pile, dog pile, dog pile. And it's where that sphere I talked about in one of my earlier videos, where when I think back in my past, and it's like standing inside a sphere, and my immediate area is calm, but the rest of it is all just on the outside, just spinning, 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 spinning. You need that perspective. You need to follow it, as tough as it is. All right, everybody. I'm going to wrap this one up. I'll produce another one real soon. I look forward to your comments. Thank you. It's been great. Thank you for subscribing and liking. And if you have any questions and you want to chat, you can either hit me up on Facebook or on YouTube. And I'll talk to you real soon. Thanks. Bye.